listen and practice. Mia often found herself in a quiet corner of her mind, a world where English words seemed to dance just out of reach. The desire to speak fluently burned fiercely within her, yet a heavy cloak of hesitation always seemed to descend. Every attempt felt like navigating a dense fog, making simple conversations feel monumentally challenging for her. Listen and practice, her online tutor advised, a phrase that echoed in her thoughts. But how exactly? Mia wondered, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of native speech online. It wasn't just about hearing, it was about understanding the nuances, the rapid pace, and the subtle intonations that native speakers effortlessly employed every single day. How to talk in English became her relentless search query, leading her down countless rabbit holes of advice. She craved a magic formula, a secret handshake that would unlock her tongue. Yet, every conversation felt like a performance where she was constantly missing her cues, leading to a profound sense of frustration. Let me tell you, Mia felt, deep down, that there had to be a better way than simply memorizing lists. Her textbooks were filled with grammar rules, but applying them in real-time conversations was an entirely different beast. The gap between knowing and doing felt wider than the ocean itself, sometimes making her give up. Talking tips seemed too simple, yet also profoundly complex. Was it about pronunciation, intonation, or simply having the courage to open her mouth? Mia longed for practical, actionable steps that she could implement immediately, rather than abstract theories. She needed clarity, not more confusion in her learning journey. How to think and speak was the revelation that truly began to shift her perspective. For too long, she had been translating everything word for word in her head before uttering a sound. This internal dictionary consultation was painfully slow, causing awkward pauses and often leading to garbled sentences. "Why I always make mistakes," she silently lamented, was the question that plagued her nights. Every grammatical error, every mispronounced word, felt like a personal failing. This relentless self-criticism created a vicious cycle of fear and avoidance, further hindering her progress and confidence in speaking. How to learn English became a quest, not just a task. Mia realized that her traditional methods were insufficient. She needed to immerse herself, to breathe English, to dream in it if possible. The conventional classroom approach, while foundational, wasn't providing the practical fluency she desperately craved. Why reading is so important, her new online community emphasized, explaining its multifaceted benefits. It wasn't merely about expanding vocabulary, it was about internalizing sentence structures and natural phrasing. Reading offered a window into the mind of native speakers, revealing how they constructed thoughts seamlessly. Why you must listen, they urged, highlighting the critical role of auditory input. Listening wasn't passive, it was an active exercise in pattern recognition and absorption. The more she listened, the more her ears attuned to the rhythm and flow of English, making comprehension feel less like a struggle. Learn English through stories became her favorite new approach. Unlike dry textbooks, stories captivated her imagination and emotions. She found herself eagerly anticipating the next chapter, inadvertently absorbing new words and phrases in a meaningful context, making the learning process genuinely enjoyable. My day struggle, however, remained a persistent reality. Some days, progress felt like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The frustration of forgetting a simple word or fumbling a sentence lingered. Yet, She was slowly learning to embrace these struggles as part of the natural learning curve. Mia started her day with listening. Podcasts became her constant companions during her commute. She didn't always understand every single word, but she focused on the overall gist and the speaker's intonation. This consistent exposure slowly began to rewire her brain, making sounds more familiar over time. She practiced repeating phrases she heard, mimicking the accent and rhythm. This active listening transformed a passive activity into an engaging exercise. Her tongue felt clumsy at first, but with each repetition, the sounds started to feel more natural, building muscle memory for speaking. Then came the talking tips. Her tutor suggested starting small, speaking about familiar topics to herself. This removed the pressure of an audience, allowing her to experiment with new vocabulary and grammatical structures without fear of immediate judgment or embarrassing mistakes. She recorded herself speaking, then listened back critically. It was uncomfortable at first, hearing her own errors amplified. But this self-assessment became an invaluable tool for identifying specific areas for improvement, from pronunciation to sentence coherence. She could then focus her efforts precisely. The How to Think and Speak advice revolutionized her internal monologue. Instead of translating, Mia began to consciously form her thoughts directly in English. This required a deliberate shift, but it gradually reduced the mental processing time before speaking, making conversations flow more smoothly. She imagined scenarios, practicing dialogues in her head. Ordering coffee, asking for directions, or even discussing abstract concepts. This mental rehearsal built confidence and prepared her for real-life interactions. It was like a silent practice stage before the main performance, honing her skills. Why reading is so important became evident as her vocabulary expanded exponentially. She devoured graded readers, then moved on to simplified news articles and blogs. Each new word encountered in context solidified its meaning far more effectively than isolated flashcards ever could in her mind. She paid attention to how sentences were constructed, the natural flow of ideas, and common collocations. This exposure to authentic language through reading improved her grammar intuitively, helping her to build more complex and accurate sentences naturally, without constant conscious effort. Why you must listen became her mantra. Mia understood that listening was not just about understanding, but also about absorbing the rhythm and intonation. She consciously sought out different accents, training her ear to adapt to variations and making her a more versatile listener. She used podcasts, audiobooks, and even English language music to immerse herself. The constant auditory input created a rich linguistic environment, making English feel less like a foreign concept and more like a natural part of her daily life, a constant background hum. Learn English through stories was indeed a game changer. She started with simple fairy tales, then progressed to short novels. The narrative context made new vocabulary memorable, and the emotional engagement fostered deeper retention than rote memorization ever could for her. Each story offered a microcosm of English culture and expression. She wasn't just learning words, she was understanding nuances of social interaction and common idioms. This holistic approach made learning feel less like a chore and more like an exciting adventure of discovery. My daily struggle persisted, yet her perspective had shifted. Some days, she still stumbled, still felt inadequate. But now, she viewed these moments not as failures, but as opportunities for learning and growth. The journey was long, but she was making undeniable progress. The initial fear of making mistakes began to wane. Mia realized that errors were an inevitable and necessary part of the learning process. Each mistake provided valuable feedback, guiding her towards greater accuracy and fluency in her ongoing linguistic development. She started engaging in online language exchange groups, tentatively at first. The real-time interaction, though nerve-wracking, was incredibly rewarding. Every successful conversation, no matter how brief, boosted her confidence and solidified her growing ability to communicate effectively. Her biggest challenge remained maintaining consistency. Life often got in the way, and there were days when she felt too tired or overwhelmed to practice. Yet, she understood that small, consistent efforts outweighed sporadic, intense bursts of studying for true mastery. Mia set achievable daily goals: listen to one podcast episode, read one article, and speak aloud for 5 minutes. These manageable tasks prevented burnout and ensured continuous, albeit slow, progress. The power of habit proved to be a formidable ally in her journey. She kept a small journal, noting new words and phrases, but also reflecting on her progress and challenges. This metacognitive practice helped her stay motivated and identify patterns in her errors, allowing for more targeted practice and improvement in her skills. The frustration of why I always make mistakes slowly transformed into curiosity. Instead of dwelling on errors, she analyzed them. What was the rule she missed? What was the correct phrasing? This analytical approach turned setbacks into learning opportunities, empowering her journey. She discovered that many mistakes stemmed from her native language interference. By becoming aware of these common pitfalls, she could proactively address them, training her brain to adopt English sentence structures and idioms rather than direct translations. The concept of how to talk in English became less daunting. It wasn't about perfection, but about effective communication. She learned to use simpler sentences when necessary, and to rephrase if misunderstood, focusing on conveying her message clearly. Her confidence grew with each small victory, understanding a joke, participating in a brief discussion, or even simply asking for directions without hesitation. These moments validated her efforts and fueled her motivation to continue pushing forward, day by day. Let me tell you, talking tips resonated deeply now. It wasn't just theoretical, it was practical application. She actively sought out opportunities to speak, joining online forums and even finding a local conversation partner, embracing real-world practice opportunities. The fear of being judged, though never entirely gone, significantly diminished. She realized that most native speakers were patient and appreciative of her efforts. Their encouragement became a powerful motivator, helping her overcome shyness. How to think and speak became second nature over time. Her internal monologue switched predominantly to English. This seamless flow of thought directly into speech was the ultimate marker of her progress, a true testament to her persistent dedication. She even started dreaming in English occasionally, a surreal and exciting experience. These subconscious manifestations confirmed that the language was truly integrating into her deepest cognitive processes, marking significant breakthroughs in her journey. Why reading is so important was undeniable. Her comprehension of complex texts improved dramatically. She could now read articles on diverse subjects, expanding her knowledge not just of English, but of the world through an English lens. Reading also provided a rich source of idiomatic expressions and colloquialisms that were difficult to grasp through pure listening. It filled in the gaps, adding color and authenticity to her spoken English, making her sound more natural. Why you must listen continued to be foundational. She diversified her listening sources, from documentaries to news reports, exposing herself to varied vocabulary and discourse styles. Her ear became incredibly attuned to different accents and speaking speeds. She started watching English movies and TV shows without subtitles, gradually moving from understanding the gist to catching subtle humor and cultural references. This passive entertainment became a highly effective tool for immersive learning. Learn English through stories remained her comfort zone and her most enjoyable method. She revisited beloved tales, now understanding them at a deeper level, appreciating the linguistic artistry and narrative complexities previously unnoticed by her. She even began to write her own short stories in English, a creative outlet that solidified her vocabulary and grammar. This active production of language was a powerful way to reinforce everything she had learned through consumption. My daily day's struggle transformed into my daily day's progress. Challenges still arose, but her resilience had grown. She had built a robust system of learning and self-correction, capable of navigating the ups and downs of language acquisition. Mia became an advocate for consistent, varied practice. She understood that there was no single magic bullet, but rather a combination of dedicated effort across all four skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, all intertwined effectively. She shared her journey with others, offering encouragement and practical advice from her own experience. Her struggles had become lessons, and her progress, an inspiration for fellow learners facing similar obstacles in their own paths. The once intimidating prospect of speaking English now felt like an exciting opportunity. Each conversation was a chance to practice, to learn, and to connect with others on a deeper level, overcoming her initial fears completely. She realized that fluency wasn't about being perfect, but about being able to communicate effectively and confidently. It was about expressing herself authentically, even with an accent or occasional grammatical slip, without hesitation. Her confidence radiated, impacting other areas of her life too. The discipline and perseverance she cultivated in her English learning spilled over, making her more resilient and adaptable in facing new challenges. Mia's journey was far from over, but the foundational shifts had occurred. She had moved from passive consumption to active production, from fear of mistakes to embracing them as stepping stones towards mastery and confidence. The initial query, "Why I always make mistakes," now felt like a distant echo. She understood that mistakes were not failures, but indicators of effort, pushing her boundaries and highlighting areas for further improvement consistently. The answers to how to learn English had unfolded organically through her persistent practice and willingness to experiment with different methods. It was a holistic process, integrating mind, ear, eye, and voice in harmony. She looked forward to the continuous process of learning and refining her English. Every day brought new words, new phrases, and new insights into the beautiful complexity of the language she had come to love. And so, Mia's English voice grew stronger, clearer, and more confident with each passing day. Her story was a testament to the power of perseverance, turning the daunting task of language acquisition into a fulfilling personal triumph.